Ayin, subsection 7. We're in the middle of talking about agunis, a woman whose husband disappears. So, like we spoke about in a short way, the fact that even though, like we introduced in the beginning of the siman, of how stringent the violation of relations with a married woman is. But the sages were lenient when it came to a woman whose husband disappeared in what's usually required for testimony, that there's to be two people who, the two witnesses, two proper witnesses, who they have to be kosher witnesses, meaning there's all kinds of qualifications, etc. In the case of an aguna, of a woman whose husband disappeared, if even one witness comes and says that he died, or even if that witness is not what we would usually consider a kosher witness, if it's a woman, a slave, somebody who has done one of the violations that would render him rabbinically unfit for testimony, the only person that we don't accept the testimony is an idol worshiper, including a Jewish idol worshiper, and somebody who has done what do they call it, like a class 1 felony or something. He's done something biblical. He was convicted of a biblical violation that renders one biblically unfit for testimony. And even them, you can if they gave it over, not as testimony, but during the course of a conversation, meaning they were giving it over without the intention to testify, then we can follow that. And most agree that even if it's not, for example, in some cases we require that when they give it, when they tell it over, they were also conversing about other things, not just that thing alone. But in this case, even if that was the only thing that was in the conversation, then we spoke about, furthermore, even when we say an idol worshiper cannot give testimony besides for Mesiach Lepitumai. However, we do allow somebody who's about tshuva, who came back, somebody if it's during the time of a gzeira, if it's during the time when, like the Inquisition and these kind of things, where they're forcing Jews to convert, and then once he's able to, he comes back, so he's allowed to. Now, this doesn't mean usually in such a case what he saw before he converted, and if he testifies after he comes back, it's fine, because they say that the beginning and the end was good. In this case, even if the beginning wasn't good, so to speak, meaning even if he witnessed that this guy was dead during the time that he was converted, outside of Judaism, we still, being that it was forced upon him, we still, even though really you're supposed to get killed and not refuse to convert, but still, since it was forced upon him, we don't consider it that he was an idol worshiper during this time. And it seems like the Chalkas Mechekik and the Beis Shmuel seem to agree. Sorry, the Chalkas Mechekik says that this is only during the time he was forced. If he could have come back already, and in the meantime he didn't come back and he schlepped it out and he was eating treifus and acting like not so Jewish, then it's no good, because then he wasn't forced during this time. It's only during the time he was forced we consider he was an idol worshiper. However, brings the Beis Shmuel that even more, that even if the guy didn't come back right away and he could have come back, that he brings that the Turi Zav, right, the Taz brings that we're even lenient on this, and only if the guy was like a complete Russia gomer, but like he became like a total anti-Semite and was it was really a total Russia. It's still unless such a case, it is still fine. We would still be able to use his testimony. Now, remember, even if we can't use his testimony, he can still, just like anybody else, just like an idol worshiper, a regular idol worshiper, he can still Mesiach Levitumah. He can still, if it's during the course of a conversation, he's not testifying. But in this case, he can actually testify, and he ends off there that Hakoil Lefi Inyan. This is the Ramah finishes that Hakoil Lefi Inyan Ha'edol Lefi is in Adayan. At the end of the day, it's if he's really a Russia, if he's not, etc. All these things, it's really at the end of the day a game day call that the Beis Din will have to see based on the situation in front of us, based on the person, based on the situation, and based on how they understand it. Zayin. Bo echad v'amar aragtiv. Now we have a problem. A guy comes and says, "I killed him." So if we believe him, he's a murderer. On the one hand, if we believe him, the guy's dead. She can remarry, right? On the other hand, he's a murderer. How can we accept his testimony? Tinase, she can get married. The ain other mesim atzmai rasha, that a person cannot make himself a rasha. Upalginon dibure, and we split his words, meaning we trust him for the fact, we trust him on the part a person can't make himself a rasha. So he says, meaning he can't convict himself, he can't use his testimony to convict himself. So we don't believe him when he says he killed somebody. On the other hand, so if you don't believe him, so then the guy then we'll say the guy's not dead. No, we cut his words in half. For the part that he saw that the guy's dead, we believe him. But for the part that he's a murderer, we don't believe him. And she can get married based on this. And the same thing with an idol worshiper, a non-Jew, that says it. He's not giving testimony, but he's in a conversation. He's at the he's at the tavern, and he says, "Oh, I killed such and such." And the same, but not we can't accept his testimony. We never can. But Mesiach Levitum, we can understand the same thing. We split his words in two. Is that we believe him, and his wife, the wife can be married. So if one comes and says, "I killed him," she can marry based on this. That so the Bach writes that in some of the Sfarim of the Tur, which I guess is the source for this in the Mechaber, it says if one of them comes, and it's talking about what we said before, meaning even if the person, right, even if this person is a woman, it's a woman or a slave, so it's this thing. If somebody comes and says it's referring to all of those above mentioned people. That's why in the Torah there it says echod mehem, one of them. Afilu gabi didu, even by him or by her, by them. Amrinon, we say palginon dibure. We split the words. Ve'ein makes him atzmei rasha, and they cannot make themselves a rasha. They cannot. Meaning because usually a murderer would presumably be no good to give testimony. But in this case, we don't accept that part. We only accept the part that the guy's dead, but we don't accept this guy's the murderer. However, in the accurate Sfarim, it does not say it this way. It doesn't say mayhem, echad mayhem, one of them. It just says one came, bo echad. So it's possible that by a slave we do not say we split his words. Because by a slave he can make himself a rasha. He can make himself evil. He can make himself, in other words, he can condemn himself with his own words, and he's not trusted. And of course, this is specifically when he is intending to give testimony, because as we said before, that even somebody completely puzzled, even somebody that cannot give testimony biblically is prohibited from giving testimony. Even he can be mesech lefitumai. He can, if it's during a conversation and he's not testifying. So it seems that according to there's one girsa that all of these above mentioned people, including a slave, this applies to. If he says I killed him, we split the words and she can marry. However, according to Chelkes Mechekik, where he looks at the specifics of the words and he seems to hold that the girsa, the version that we have here, one comes and says rather than one of them comes and says. So it seems that a slave is not trusted because he can make himself a rasha. And therefore, if he testifies, it's no good. But if he says it during the course of conversation, it's fine. Beis Shmuel. One comes and says, I killed him. Even though, according to this, he's a rasha, he's evil, right? Biblically, and he's biblically prohibited from giving testimony, unless it's during the course of a conversation. Even so, Amrinon, we say palginon dibure, we split his words. The hoya im horeitzlim, that we say that he was with the murderers, right? Because meaning we say he taka witnessed it, he was there. But he was not the murderer. Mishum the ein odam meisamat meirosha, because a person cannot make himself a rasha. Mishum hachi amrin and palgin deborim. Therefore, we say we split his words. Vafilu imu ever de shifcha amrin palgin debori bach. He brings down the bach. He doesn't bring down any counter to the bach. So it would seem that the Beis Shmuel holds that it would seem he holds that even that like the bach is saying, like those other girsas, that even an eved or a shifcha. So I'm assuming here that the Beis Shmuel holds like the Bach, unlike the Chalkas Mechekik, who counters the Bach, and seems to hold that because the more accurate books do not say the word of them in there, that it does not include a servant. Who adin the akum shaman the same thing would be for idol worshippers, right? For the nations, right? To the who serve stars and constellations. If obviously if they're giving it not in terms of testimony, they're giving it that if they say they killed him, we trust them that they killed him. And we're not worried that the reason he's saying this is just to strike fear into the person he's talking to. Why? Because we have no proof that his intention is to frighten this one, right? Like, let's say he wants to force this guy to give his money. The guy says, "No, I'm not giving you money," and he says, "I'll kill you like I killed Yankel Pipik," right? So he killed Yankel Pipik. Yankel Pipik's wife doesn't know where he is. He disappeared in the forest. He was going what's it called as a merchant. He disappeared. We don't know where he is. Here, this guy just said, "I'll kill you like I killed Yankel Pipik." So obviously Yankel Pipik is dead. She can remarry. And right. So we said, wait a second. He's just trying to strike fear into somebody. So we don't say he's trying to strike fear in somebody. Man, something I don't know. If you dollar, I don't know if you dollar. Let me see what this dollars. But in either case, there's a case in if you dollar where we say he's trying to strike fear in his heart. Um, yeah, we see. Yeah, okay. So he actually has this in Sif Yudalit. Let me just check out what's this Rashi Tavis here. So basically, in Seif Yudalid, we have there's a case of like we're talking about the case of Yankel Pipik just now, where he tells somebody, "Give me your money, or I'm gonna kill you like I killed this one." So in that case, we know clear that what's he doing? He's dafke. He's coming to he's looking to strike fear in his heart. So he has an agenda here. So he can't trust that he really killed that guy, right? We know Yankel Pipik's wife's been looking for him. And this guy who's trying to rob you, he also knows this, that he's missing. So tell him, oh, give me your money or I'll kill you like I killed this other guy. And since the guy's missing, you'll believe him that he killed him and you'll give him the money. So in this case, he has an agenda. So says the Beit Shmuel is saying, unless we know specifically that this is the case, right? Like in that case where it's clear his agenda, give me your money or I'll kill you like I killed him. Other than that, unless we have an actual reason to believe this, we do not hold that this is his agenda, that he has any agenda like this. Here, let me see here. Where's 14? Here we go. It's Ledover Acher. That's the case. Meaning he intended for something else. He had an outside agenda. Right. So there in Insif Yudalit, he said it specifically. We know that he had an agenda to make the person fearful. And in that case, we don't trust him. Therefore, we don't suspect unless we have a good reason to. We don't suspect by anyone who's giving it in the course of a conversation, right? That maybe he's lying or other suspicions. Called delay muchach mitach dvarav, as long as there's no proof from his words. We don't establish it that this is what it is. And we don't go after this, and we don't worry about it. Okay, so basically, the Beit Shmuel here, he's just drawing a difference. He's saying we don't worry about him having an outside agenda. unless, and he says, in Sifyu Dalad we worry about that, and that, as we'll see there, he has reason to have those to worry about that because of something he said that implies that he has an outside agenda. Ches. If a person, one witness says to a woman between him and between her, meaning not in public, he says it privately to her, your husband died, she no longer requires his testimony. But she can go to the Beis Din, and she can say, my husband died. Aval, however, in Baha'id, Sha'amra b'shmei meis, that she says in his name that he died, right? She says, this witness says my husband died. And he says, no, I didn't say, I said no such thing. I didn't say that to her. She's not trusted then. Hagar, so Rama says, Ve'ima based in tzrichin l'shliach acharov, Ein ha-based in tzrichin l'shliach acharov. However, the Beis Din does not have to send after him, even though he is in his city. But we rely on one witness from another witness in the first place, and being that we know that the guy's wife can be an aid when it comes to her her husband dying, so that she can be a witness. So she's a good witness for this. She heard from another witness that he died, and it's fine. Right, but if wait, hang on a second. Let me just see if let's start with the Beis Shmuel because it starts earlier in this Eve. At Beis Shmuel, Ella Bala Beis Din, but she comes rather. She doesn't have to go. She doesn't have to. She's no longer requires his testimony. She just goes to the Beis Din. The im amra, and if she says the ha'idim amru, la the teva, the tova bayam. And if she says that witnesses said that he drowned, and a Beis Din already was mad to her, they already gave her permission to remarry, she's trusted. The Ein b'tshuvas Tzemach Tzedek, and see what the Tzemach Tzedek writes about this. Siman Kuf Aleph. So I don't know what that's exactly about, which is interesting, by the way, because the Tzemach Tzedek, if I recall right, was very much involved in Agunis specifically. He was, I believe, Tzemach Tzedek was known for right? Was it Tzemach Tzedek? I think so.
That it was Tzemach Tzedek. He was known as a go-to. A lot of his chuvas and also a lot of miracle stories. Yeah,
right, but a lot of his work was focused on helping find husbands, prove that husbands were dead, etc., etc. He was very involved in this thing.
Freeing goodness.
Yeah. So now Aval, we'll go with the Chagz Mechekik. Aval im ba'ha'id, Shamar b'shmei. However, if the witness that she said it in his name comes and says, "Not true, I didn't say that." Pirush afilu ba'achar sheitiru nase. She comes to the Beis Din and she says, "Such so and so came to me and told me my husband died." And I say, "Okay, then you can marry." Now he comes and says, "No, I didn't tell her that. They already told you can marry." Loy tinase. She cannot. Her permission to marry then gets revoked. V'din zeh kosav Aran b'shem Ramban. This is Aran in the name of the Ramban. Be'perek Amadir Daf Tov Kuf Gimel. Be'isha she'amra, and a woman that said, "Plainly chacham tihedli akesem v'chacham makhisha." In the case where a woman comes and she says that I showed my my eid bdike, right? I showed my cloth that I checked myself with. I showed it to such and such a Rav, and he said it's good, meaning she can now go to mikveh and have relations with her husband, right? And this Rav says, no, I didn't say no such thing. V'siyim sham, and he finishes there. V'chein hadin, and so too is the law. B'chol aid mipi aid, and any witness from another witness. In baharishin the kafar ein hasheni shamar mishmei nemon. Is that so? In any case where you would accept the testimony of one witness, and you accept it one witness from another one witness, he brings from that case of the case with the Rav and the stain, that in any such case, if the original witness that the person's quoting comes back and says, I didn't say that, then the second person is not trusted. So I received this ruling. Until here is the words of the Iran. Now, however, in that case, right, in the regular case, besides for agunis, you're talking about a kosher witness. Who hears it? From another kosher witness. In this case, you're talking about a woman who heard it. It could be a woman who heard it from a slave. Right? This wife of this person hears it from a slave. Because it doesn't say who the aid is, so we can assume it means any of the witnesses that were mentioned above that usually we wouldn't accept. So now what happens if a maidservant comes and says to her, and then she goes and tells the beis din, and then this maidservant comes back and says, no, I didn't say this. V'chein, and so too im aid kosher maid, if a kosher witness testifies b'shem eved shifra, in the name of a slave or a maidservant, which, as we know, in agunis works, generally speaking. Ubaha evedu machisha, and this slave or maidservant comes and contradicts him, says, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say this to you. Maybe in this case, the Ramban would not agree that the first witness is trusted. Why? Because even though we're trusting the aguna, in the case of agunis, we're trusting the slave, but we're not trusting him more than a regular person. So maybe in that case, the second witness who says, I heard it, he told me, he's right, and the slave is lying, because we can trust the second person more than the first person. So maybe the second person would be trusted. However, what if the person doesn't say, I didn't tell you that, he just said, I lied to you? Now that's more complicated, because if the first person says he told me, the slave said he told me, and the regular person
says, like, I made him a mixes. It's not like a kaifer hakol. He's made a mixes. He says, I did tell you something, but it just was something else. And
it's also a matter of who do you believe over who. In the first case, it's a matter of, do we believe the second person over the one who told him, because he's saying, I didn't tell you. And this one who's more trustworthy says, you did tell me. So okay, so maybe we'll trust him. In this case, he's saying, no, I thought I told you. So the second person is telling the truth. He's not contradicting him at all. He's saying, but I told you false testimony. So the whole thing is, do we trust? The whole trusting or not trusting now relies on the first guy and the original guy. We trust 100% the second guy. The problem is, can we trust the guy who told him? And the Iran already wrote that when he tells him, it helps, it doesn't have to be in a beis din. He could have told him just not in beis din. Mikol Malkim still him Amru Achar Kach. Mabudin, what's Mabudin? see. So my place was here somewhere. Here we go. Oh, my Budin just means lying. So, if so, but still, so the Ran already wrote in a tshuva that even though we accept what he said outside of Beis Din. However, if they say after that, Mabudin, we were lying them on him, they're trusted. And he brought a proof to this. The fathers the mighty the aid Hashem b'fnei Beis Din. However, we can assume the words, or we are able to explain the words of the Ran as meaning, so long as he did all of this is so long as he did not testify in front of a Beis Din. But the truth is, there's no reason to differentiate the matel or idus eid hasheni, because what does it help? The testimony of the second witness when the first witness can't take back his words. And therefore, basically, because this is it basically brings up several points of mistapkin, where it's unclear. It's unclear what would be the case if the person who comes is an avid. It's unclear what would be if the person says, you told me, but I was lying. And therefore, it's very important. He said he finalizes that anytime there's a witness from the mouth of a witness, in this case, somebody tells this lady she should check very well to make sure that the first person is not somebody who's going to go back from his testimony and say I lied, because then she's going to have a problem. Now, says the Beis Shmuel on this same thing. Avalim bo'ed, but if the witness comes, Ramban v'Haran, so he brings this the same Iran and the Ramban, right? Who they bring the case of the Rav and the cloth with the stain, and he said it's good. The woman, or the woman says he says it's good. He says no, I didn't, and they bring from that. So too is the case in every witness from the mouth of another witness. If the first witness comes back, and not like the shulti gebeirim in the end of Yavamis, Ayin Sim and Kuf Tezvav, See in section 115 what's written about this. And the chalkas mechayik, like we just read, misupak. He is not sure. If she said it in the name of a slave or a maidservant, if they are able to successfully contradict her. Ubitshuvas. Shin Yud. Who's Shin Yud? Anyway, in Sivan Lamed Beis Pasak, he paskins the Ein Yochel Achisha. You have a psak there that he can't. He's not able to. That a slave or a maidservant cannot counter her, cannot contradict her successfully. The ayin dinim elu b'kuntiris agunes, and see the law, the see more on these laws in the pamphlet on agunes. Simin kufrontes. And if two, however, what if two witnesses say in the same of one witness? Now, on the other hand, if we're talking about one witness from one witness, but if two witnesses come and say they heard from this one witness, being that they are two witnesses, we believe them. And even if he comes back and says, no, I didn't say this, we still believe them because they're two witnesses and he's one witness. Right? We always believe the two witnesses over the one witness. And if the first witness comes back and rather than say I didn't say that, he says I was lying. So the Chalkas Mechekik writes that he's believed. Since when he told it over not in front of a Beis Din. Gam Kosav, he also writes that Tzricha Isha Lacher Heitev. Right, so this was the final thing. What was the final thing that Chalkas Mechekik wrote? The final thing he wrote is therefore a woman needs to check well. That this person is not going to retract their testimony. Before she goes into a Beis Din, she better make sure that there's no possibility he's going to, or this, to at least minimize the possibility of him coming back. And certainly his kavanah there was just as he's giving you a piece of good advice. He's not paskening on that. He's giving the woman a piece of good advice. Because if you're not going to check well, look what could happen. And then you're going to have problems. But mitzad the din, if she comes to the Beis Din, we believe her. But what if she didn't check well? Now she's going to have problems. And he could say, I was lying. The imkain ein yatiru al piv aid kishay ein b'farenu. That we're not going to be matir, right? Because if he's paskening, then we would never, the Beis Din would never allow her to marry based on her hearing from another witness. Why? Because he could always come back. So therefore, if he can come back, so why would they trust her ever? He can come back and say he was lying. But rather, what the Chalkas Mechekik is saying, the Beis Din is going to accept your if you come and say that such and such came and he told me that he saw my husband dead, they're going to believe her. But he's giving advice. If a woman who hears this thing, you better make sure that this witness, that he's not going to come back and say he was lying or whatever, because then you are going to have problemos. So we said then, and Eina based in Tzrichim l'shliach acharov, the basin does not have to send after him. Af al pishu hu ba'ir, even though he's in the city. Well, he says be'ir. The Ramah actually says be'iroi, even though he's in his city. Eina dover hazem mevur behedya. This is not specifically explained, but shuvas amariv. That's what was it? Rabbi Yaakov Weil, I think. Shemimenu heitzi harav din zeh simin test. That from him is where the Ramah, I guess, gets this psak. That's the source for it. Rather, in that tshuva, he was talking about when the first witness, the one who told her, lives in a different country. That then you don't have to go after him and check his words. And the proof that he brings is from what we learned in Yevamis, Amud Beis. If we hear from he heard, she heard, whatever it is, from women who say that this person died, daya, it's enough. Ri Eimer Afilu Shama min hatinaikis Eimris. Even if the toddlers, right, the little children are saying, we're going to eulogize and bury this person. So why don't we say the same thing? Why don't we ask them to clarify? Ad kam l'shaynim. So Hershel Farish, so we can explain Shishama. So why Taka don't we go and be mevayer in those cases? So Hershel Farish, we can explain the Shisham Pinoshim makes Medina Cheres. That's because he heard it from women and little children in a different country. The Mistame Imayu Ba'Isa'ir, Hayu Yedim. Why? Because if we're talking about the case where it's in this, where they're in the same city as us, so everybody would know. How do these women know, and how do these children know, and everybody else doesn't know? So in that case, everybody would know already. So it must be talking about they're in a different country. And also what the Gemara asks there, which means basically they're making a fake death, right? The children are making a fake death. Perush, meaning the Gemara maksha al hada amar atinekis. The Gemara asks on this that the small children said we're going to eulogize and bury this guy. Dilma chagav ba'al mehemisu. Maybe they killed a grasshopper. They killed a grasshopper. Hatinaikis, these children. V'asku shmeid dechagov b'shemish pleni. And they gave the grasshopper the name of this person. Kederech shatineikis misachim, as children are wont to play. So they killed the grasshopper, and they call him a Yankel Pipik. And he said, "Oh, we're going to eulogize, and what's it called? And the bury Yankel Pipik." And they don't realize, these people who heard it. They don't realize Yankel Pipik is the name of their grasshopper. That they did this. There was a guy, Yankel Pipik, who comes to the shul when he's an out of town business, and they like him very much. He tells stories and gives candy, so they honored him by giving the grasshopper his name and killing and burying and eulogizing this grasshopper. Oh, Yankel Pipik was such a good guy. He gave us candies. And now, convey to us that we have to go eulogize and bury him. And then, of course, the next Shabbos, they told Yankel Pipik about his own funeral. But So according to, yeah, so that's who it is. The Mahariv is I forget, it's I think Yankiv Vail, whatever it was. That we're talking about when they are in the city. So why the Gemara is asking, maybe it's the kids playing games. Like, let's ask the children. Is Yankel Pipik a person? Was it a grasshopper? What are we talking about here? So therefore, certainly it's talking about when that the children aren't in front of us. Because otherwise, why would the Gemara ask? Maybe they were talking about a grasshopper. It's okay to go ask them. So it must be you don't have the option to go ask them. Oh, b'mikdash melech, maybe it is. It could be mikdash melech. Roisi Yesa Perigid Gimel Milchus Gerishin Din Yitezvav Shekosav Al Din Shekosav Rambam Zal V'Zel Sheni. So he writes comments on the Rambam, and he says like this: Kvar Eidinu She'Eid She'Omer Shamaiti She'Meis Plini. We already said that a witness who says that I heard that this such and such a person died, even if he hears from a woman who hears from a slave, this is valid for right, even if it's from a woman who heard from a slave or heard from a maidservant. This is good, and she can marry based on this. But if this witness or this woman or this slave says this person died and I saw it, so we ask him, well, wait, so what did you see exactly, right? Because we want to make sure it's not like we had before, the case where the person probably died, he saw him very sick, he saw him with an arrow sticking out of his belly, so he's assuming he died, versus did he actually see him dead? Like we saw before in Sifhei. The cost of all about Mikdash Melech, and the Mikdash Melech writes on this: Afal Pik Shehu Aimin Shamati Shemeis and on Yedin. Ha'Aimin Arishon Kates the Hoyedei Shemeis. Even though when he heard from somebody else, we don't know exactly how the first person saw. In Donin Efshar Mishii Efshar. We don't use the same rules in the case where it's impossible to clarify, as in the case where it's possible to clarify, meaning even though you saw in this other case where you heard it from somebody, we don't clarify. Why we don't clarify there? Because we can't clarify there. And therefore, since we can't clarify, we allow her to marry based on this. However, in the case you can clarify, you do clarify. The hachak even the extra vadim saying they say that there where it's possible. So for sure you ask Mad Kan L'Shem. Im kain koshe derishon beir im kain gam efshir hu v'lomali nishal yisay v'frad mashkot l'mayla sikat nidzayin shirishon yochel laksa medusay. Especially even though, like we said, the chalkis mechekik wasn't paskening. He was giving up a good advice to a woman to make sure that the guy is not lying. At the same time, the fact is that there's a possibility the guy can come back from his testimony. So therefore, well, this is the Chalkul Mechekik, but it's like he himself was saying. So therefore, obviously, the Chalkul Mechekik is saying, if the person is in this city, he's here, then go clarify. Better to go clarify. Like, why wouldn't we? Over to the Beis Shmuel. So in short, that whole Chalkis Mechekik is what are we talking about, right? Is when we say we don't clarify if he's in the city, and which maybe is why the Ramah it says Be'irah in his city rather than in the city. But basically, the Chalkis Mechekik says that it must be talking about that he's not in your city. He must be somewhere else, because if it's in your city and you can clarify, then why on earth would you not clarify? Ein a basin tzrichen l'shleich acharav, says the Beis Shmuel, kein mashma b'shuvas rivayil. Shekosav, that he wrote. Atu kol ha-mishnayis, v'kol ha-peskim sheposku the matirun al-pi eid, mipi eid. Aidi kulam b'deleisa eid rishon b'razis. Right, he says that everybody who says that by aid mipi aid, you don't have to clarify. It's all talking about when he's not here in this city anymore. So basically, he's bringing down what it sounds like is saying that. Yeah. So the Vial seems to hold, according to the Shmuel, that even if he's in this city, you don't have to ask after him. And the Chalkis Mechekik asks on this, right? Like we just saw. He questions this. From why? And he uses, like we said before, he uses the case of the kids with the grasshopper. And it is simple according to his shita, to his opinion. That according to him, if the children say that somebody died, he can testify on this, that he's heard it from the children. Even if these tinekes ba'ir, if they're still in the city, in tzarich lishul eisam, and therefore it asks there, maybe it's a grasshopper they're talking about. The ask Yishama come to B'Shem Plaini, and they put the grasshopper in the name of a certain person. Al Kain tzich. Therefore, you have to ask them. And Kain mamalei shleilim esim al kolidus. So if that's the case, why don't you ask them on the whole thing? Why do you only ask them? Are you talking about a grasshopper, or are you talking about an actual person? But there's shapir sugya. And this, it's the sugya works out this way. The mashkos with some magid the ein donin efshar mishi efshar. Even though we have from the Magid, right, that it's you don't have to say, you don't rule impossibility from a possibility, or sorry, when it's possible from when it's not possible, and therefore you have to ask him if it's a first-hand witness how he saw it. That does not contradict this din. You say that if on the actual testimony, if he knew, we ask him, but if the second witness clearly states his testimony, we do not have to ask the first aid. So anyway, the Beis Shmuel disagrees with the Chalkis Mechekik, and he says no. Even if the original witness is in this city, you don't have to clarify. Whereas the Chalkis Mechekik holds that you do have to clarify. Eid Eimer Mace. So okay, so that's the end of that sif. Basically, so the sif in summary is, if a woman comes and says that such and such told me that my husband died, we can believe her. However, if that witness comes back and says, no, I didn't say that, or if he says, well, if he says I didn't say that, then we turn it over, right? The ruling is turned over. She can't marry, and then it's questionable How about in the case where he says I lied? How about in the case where the original witness was a servant, was a slave, and the person who heard it from him is not? Everybody agrees if it's two witnesses that say that the one then the first witness, even not a slave, can't his original words stand and she can marry. And since we're worried about those things, the Chalkes Mechekik he suggests that you should be very careful about these words. It seems that he can go back on it. At least he can say I lied if it wasn't in a Beis Din. If he gave his testimony in a Beis Din, then right, we have a person in Russia. He can't make himself a Russian. So he comes to lied in front of Beis Din. That's an actual what's it called? So in that case, it's we don't believe him. The question is, when he comes, do we have to send after do we have to go and find him, find the original witness, and question him? What did you see? And so the Chelkes Mechekik says that which the Ramah says that we do not have to question him is only that's only if he's in another city. Because certainly if he's here, why wouldn't we question him? The Beis Shmuel says no, you do not have to question him, even if he's in this city. Tess, Eid Eimer Meis, Eid Eimer Nerag. One witness says he died. One says he was killed. Even though they're contradicting each other. Being that they both agree on the fact that he's not still alive anymore, because whether he died, I guess, not of what do they call it not of foul play, and whether he died of foul play, they both agree that he ain't alive no more, and therefore she can get married. Even though they are contradicting each other. Two witnesses who say they testify that the husband died, and one of them says he's killed. So he says since they contradict each other, they're not trusted. But in the Gemara, it's proven specifically the that witnesses that contradict each other in delicious v'chakin, like that's like the questioning and cross examinations. They're not trusted. We said it already. The Harvest say without Yavam is the Afkuf of base on the base. That the Gemara it says. The Mendel boy delish v'chakira be'edus isha. That meaning that this goes according to he who does not require questioning and cross-examination in the testimony that frees a woman to marry if her husband disappears. Mishum deladini maminis madmin law, because we make it like money laws. And so too, this is where the Shulchan Aruch gets it from the Tur in Chesed Mishpat, in the beginning of Simon Lamed. Shame. I think the Arkamesha came along the Eidos Hikrishu B'Chakiris Eidos and B'Teila. Meish Bar Shulchan Aruch. And Kain Hu Adin Hacha. So since we know that Eidim that contradict each other in the questioning, their testimony is two witnesses come and they testify something, but then when you're questioning them, they're contradicting each other, then they're both no good. Throw out their their testimony. So if that's the case, it should be the same thing here. According to the Rambam, the choshev hakosha begufa inyan, that the Rambam considers and any time they contradict each other in the actual thing that happened. So it's the same as contradicting each other in the examination. If that's the case, so here in our case, they're contradicting each other in the actual thing that happened, right? Did he die or did he get killed? That's gufa inyan. That's the actual thing that happened. So make it akosha, so it's called contradictory testimony. But after came along kiri, I guess Rabbi Shimon. Achasei meres meis vachsei meres nerag. That if, like we say, that if one says he died and one says he was killed, Rabbi Meir says that since they are contradicting, then she can't get married. And Rabbi Yossi, I guess, and Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Aimim say that since this one and this one admit since they're both saying they're both admitting that he's not alive on this aspect of the thing, they're in agreement, even if they're contradicting on how that came to be. So she can get married. Oh, Pirish Rashi, and Rashi explains, state soris abois. Mimdina Sayam. Two competing wives that come from overseas. Achas is mace. One says she says he died. Bitsarasa Aymer Nereg, and the competing wife says he was killed. We'll see later in 47 the same case. But this is different. Why? So why is that different? Because that is by tsaris, by competing wives who are contradicting each other. The akasha di tsara, like mikra akasha, that when competing wives contradict each other, it's not called a contradiction. Also mentioned this idea in Taisvis that when competing wives are disagreeing, it's not called a contradictory testimony. The chol delay mace be'edus should have a kosher. V'atur le'digurak loshen ha'mishnah. Kitzuras achzim and meisu achz v'chulu. Lo yikvash chosh gav din gam b'shnei edim v'kaman memzayin gam arav hetik loshen ha'mishnah zaysim eres meiz baili. So in either case, we see that the question is, when you have he's saying that over there, you see that when the two competing wives are arguing with each other, but that's by competing wives, you can't carry it over necessarily to witnesses. Meaning that it's possible we would still hold the two witnesses who say that we wouldn't believe them. But Rosh with Tshuva, Planun Aleph Simdalit Shalu B'Shnei Eidim She'Eit Eid Shehoya Haben Shalam Meis Eitzel HaKavura V'Asheni Shlo Eitzel HaKavura. In the case of a Tshuva that they asked, but then there was two witnesses, and one, right, and they say they were at his funeral, but one of them says that his son was of the deceased was there, and the other says no, he wasn't there. But he brought that a proof from this above mentioned Mishnah. That this is not considered that that this is not considered contradicting testimony. Even though in this Mishnah they're disagreeing about the actual thing. So therefore it implies the Harosh. So it would seem that the Rosh does not hold that any time they're not agreeing in any of the actual happenings, that this automatically comprises contradictory testimony. But everybody admits so chakiris, right, are chakiris are specific questions that are asked. Where did it happen? When did it happen? Then on those things, it's definitely there's always by chakiris, they're always counted as it's contradictory testimony, and both of them get disqualified from testimony. Right? So everybody holds. Right? For example, like this person says he died today. This one said he died yesterday. Which, by the way, there's a whole in ages there's a whole discussion about exactly on this thing further in what's chakiris and what's drishis, and also there's also the cases where we check to see is it possible they actually mean the same thing but are expressing it differently, etc., etc. Or for example, even let's say they're saying differently, but is it the kind of thing that you could expect people to make a mistake in? So so by this, right? And even by agunis in this case, right? Let's say a woman's husband disappeared. This one says, "Oh, he died. When did he die? Yesterday." When this one says he died 2 days ago. The testimony and you can't accept either the testimony. They just canceled out each other's testimony. So it's no good. She can't marry, right? Just like by money matters, right? Because that's where we by edus and chesed mishpat. It's in things that have to do with money. That whole sugya. And so too it is clearly by the Ran. So too in Shulchan Aruch later in Sif Chaf Aleph. And therefore the words of the Rab in the Bach are surprising. Mikol Makim din Zeh be'echadei ben meis v'echad menerag toli b'im shenispe kerambam nifse kerambam shekol hakosh b'guf shel davar havi kakiris imkein ein amanim. So, and the whole thing will depend on this whole thing. All of these will depend on whether they cancel each other out. In our case, will depend on do we go by the Rambam that anything that has to do with the actual happening, right? So, for example, like we said, if one says killed and one says no, you just dropped dead, you had a hard time, drop dead. Or alternatively, if one says how do we know they were by the funeral? One says the son was there, one says the son wasn't there. So these things, according to the Rambam, are considered the same as chakiris. It's considered the same as if they were to contradict each other on what day it happened, and they wouldn't be trusted. Therefore, they're not trusted. And whereas on the other hand, the Rosh and his tshuva, right, and the Riyaz, they do not hold like the Rambam, and they don't consider it chakiris. They consider it drishis, which is like more the cross examination, which there's more leeway into than the chakiris. Al-Kain, and therefore pasuk den emanim, and therefore they paskin that even if that in this case, our case here, where one says he was killed and one says he died, so the Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Rosh and like the Riyaz, and not like the Rambam, and they hold that we are able to accept his testimony, and she may marry. Beis Shmuel, same thing. One says he died, one says he was killed. Betur koso b'shem tshuva sarosh. So he brings the same tshuva from the Rosh. Shnaim ami'idim shemeis, two witnesses that testify that he died. Even though there is a contradiction between them, she's allowed to remarry. Visham b'tshuva, and they're in that tshuva, right, of the Rosh. What do you call tshuva? Responsa. And that responsa, which doesn't help because the only reason I know what a responsa means is because they said it's a tshuva. But in that responsa, it's talking about the hoya kosher in plini hoya ba'isa ishemes. If one of them was there at the time that he died, Posak, and he Aruch, and the Rosh rules the kibun tishneim me'idim shemes have edus government. They both are testifying that he died. The bottom line is, and therefore it is a complete testimony. Mizeli nishma machishim zeh imeis einera gishleim davia koshem. And from this, it would sound like that if they were contradicting each other on whether he died or whether he's killed, that this would be contradicting each other. However, where did the Rosh learn this din out? One says he died and one says he was killed. Right? Same thing. So I don't know if it's Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Shimon Eimer Hayil Zu Vizu Meidim Shein Akaimi Nasu. That since they right, we said that who was it? I think Rabbi Meir who said that since they're contradicting each other, they can't. And Rabbi Shimon said that since they're both agreeing that he ain't alive no more, so therefore they can both get married. So therefore we can learn out from there the same thing. Learn out the same thing, that if they that by Eidim, by witnesses, if one says died and one says killed, the same thing. That they would be allowed to marry. The Beis asks on the tour, why does he write this in the name of the Rosh? So if you're getting this out of that Gemara, what do you need the Rosh in between? Why don't you just quote the Rosh's source for it? And so he answers that you must nisni shleimar davke betzoros mechizu zu they have a question. Mishum they nichem lahachshezet, so that why? So maybe because in the Mishnah, or in the Gemara, whatever, it's talking about in the Mishnah there, it's talking about davke by tzoris, by competing wives that are contradicting each other. And therefore, it's not by competing wives. We don't consider it a contradiction. However, if it's witnesses in the same case, then we would consider it to be a contradictory testimony. However, from the words of the Rosh, it's implied that even by witnesses, the same thing, that it would not be considered contradictory testimony. Kivan the Shnei made him, since they both admit the Einakayim, that he's not alive. The Chain Kosa B'Drisha V'Chalkes Mechekik, and so too the Drisha and the Chalkes Mechekik that we just learned say the same thing. That the Rosh Paskind that it's not a contradicting testimony even by witnesses and not just by competing wives. And near the chain cost of alpi divrei Tosfos. So too it seems that it would be the same thing according to Tosfos. Mashkos b'shim Rabbeinu Yael. The Airi did the Shneim boim lahat l'satzim v'loy lahachish ezem. Why? Because it's talking about that we know that they're coming to. They're really, what are they coming for? They're coming to free themselves, to marry, and not to contradict each other. According to Rabbi Meir, it's not edus. Rabbi Shimon, and they hold that it works. It's fine. Well, if he's and according to this, it works out better to say here that also by witnesses that are contradicting each other. In this case, in our case, their edus works. And this is like the answer of Yechanan there. Not like the first answer of Eliezer. And look into this subject better. You look into it and study it well, all the different sources, and you will understand what I'm trying to say here better. He says, and I saw by the Tzemach Tzedek he writes differently. I don't know what that Tzemach Tzedek says. I'm not sure what that is. That it explains there that witnesses who contradict each other, not by the chakiris, not by the basic questions of time, place, etc., but by the cross examination, that their testimony is still good. However, if they contradict each other on chakiris, right, on what day it happened, these kind of things, then they are not, their testimony gets thrown out. It's not good. Even by monetary matters. So now what happens when it's not one of the clear questions that's one of the chakiris? For example, if one person says, right, this is in Hilchos Edus actually, what happens if one person says that he lent, I witnessed he lent him wine, and the other person says I saw he lent him honey, barrels of honey, not barrels of wine, right? That according to the Rambam, the Havi Chakira, like we said before, that the Rambam holds anything that has to do with Gufa Inyan, with the actual what happened, is called the Chakira also. And if they contradict each other in these things, it's considered a contradicting testimony, and it's thrown out. The Chalkas Mechekik Ehven. The Chalkas Mechekik understands, right, the one that we just learned. He understands from this that Choshe Zu in Meisei Nereg Havi Chakira l'Rambam Kemeya Choshe Zayin Dvash. And the Chalkas Mechekik, he holds that, he says that according to the Rambam in this case would hold, meaning he says that the Mechaber holds like the Rosh against the Rambam, right? Because the Rambam would hold in this case that it's the same case like a barrel of wine, or was it a barrel of honey? The case in this case where he says, was he killed or was he or did he die? And he asked some Mechaber how did he paskin like the Rosh. Markel was there, and over there he has it longer, like we had there. And it makes more sense, says the Beis Shmuel, right? So that was the kitzur the Chalkas Mechekik was that there's an argument between the Rambam and the Rosh. This case is like the case of the barrels of wine, and the one says it says he lent barrels of wine. One says he lent barrels of honey, and the Rambam holds that that's chakiris. That's the primary questioning. Why? Because it has to do with gufa inyan. It has to do with the main thing that happened there. So he holds that the Rambam would hold so in this case also, died or killed. and therefore we can see that the Shulchan Aruch holds like the Rosh. And so says the Beis Shmuel, it seems to make more sense to hold that they're not arguing. The Rambam and the Rosh aren't arguing. Ela hakosha de kan. Rather, the contradiction here, the havikim meimana shachar umana love and the lehavi hakosh lecholi alma. But rather, the case here of he died or he killed is not like the case of wine and the honey over there. Rather, it's like the case of if it was dark coins or white coins, meaning old coins or light coins. That's really not gufa inyan. Meaning, if you gave him $100, you gave him $100. Was it a new bill? Was it an old bill? That's not really gufa inyan. Now, if it was, I saw he bought a car from him, or I saw he bought a phone from him, that's different. On the other hand, he paid him with old money, new money. It's not the kind of thing that you're going to be so attentive to. It's not considered gufa inyan, says the Beis Shmuel. And therefore everybody holds, including the Rosh and including the Rambam, that it's not a hakasha. It's not. Why not? Because it's an argument on if gufa inyan equals contradiction, but rather this is not migufa inyan. This is not. It's not. They don't consider it to be the same case. They don't consider it to be from the main things. Mishum the kiva on the nasalei and mois and he's that since he gave him the money, so you're not you see he's giving $100. You're not so particular to see what kind of coins he gave him. Kain hakinami kivon shirada eni chai eni medakikav. He was ma'meis. So the same thing here. They're holding that since he's dead. So he didn't listen. He came. We saw the guy dead. And the one guy thought he was killed, and the one guy thought he died naturally. For whatever reason, they got that impression. Doesn't make a difference. The main thing that he saw, he's dead. Once he saw he's dead, they're not. You know what I'm saying? They're not forensic scientists. They're not looking. Oh, wait a second. So this one got the impression he died. This one got the impression he's killed. Who cares? They both saw he's dead, according to the Beis Shmuel. It's enough that we can also say here that it's enough if one witness would testify that he's not alive. Even so, therefore, in the case of money, you need two witnesses. Here, you don't need two witnesses in the first place. So therefore, in this case, even if they are contradicting each other, even in Chakidis, even in the primary things of questioning. Because one of them is telling the truth, saying and therefore he's not alive, and therefore she's allowed to marry. Which on the other hand, money, the financial cases where you need two witnesses. So he's pointing out another way where you could say that the Rosh and the Rambam are not arguing with each other. Right? Because either, right, you're saying, oh, so it must be because the Chagim Mechekik says, oh, the Rosh holds, the Rosh must hold, the Rambam holds that Gufa Inyan is the same like Hakiris, and so the Rosh must hold it's not. Right? So answer one, says the Beis Shmuel, this is not, they agree with each other, but this is not Gufa Inyan. The Rosh would also, let's say the Rosh also holds that Gufa Inyan is considered Hakiris. So why here? Why here? Like this? Because they it's not Gufa Inyan, and therefore, even according to the Rambam, even according to the Rosh, it's not a problem. Right? And the second difference is the case that the Rosh, the case that the Rambam is talking about there is monetary matters where two witnesses are required, whereas here only one witness is required in the first place. And he sees all, he's also in Chuvas in Chuvas Pnei Mesha, the same thing. However, in the Shulti Geberim, he writes, Echad Amar Meis, Echad Amar Nerag, Avia Kosha. He, however, disagrees, right? The Shulti Gebedim writes that if one says died and one says killed, this is considered to be contradicting, and she cannot marry. Uvitshuvas Maram Leblin Sim Nikuvlamid Posak Mechaber Leve Kosher. So he was passing like the Mechaber that it is not considered contradictory. Miu Midali Hevi Divrei Hashulti Gebedim Yishlem Daliraz Dvarav. However, since he does not bring the words of the Shulti Gebedim to say that the Shulti Gebedim held differently, so it would seem that he did not see what the Shulti Gebedim wrote about it. If one says he drowned and one said he was killed, it would hinge on this argument, on this thing. That according to Shulti Gebedim, Masura, right? According to Shulti Gebedim, it would be Asur. Right? She would not be able to remarry. Well, according to the Mechaber, Mutaris, she would be allowed to marry. Miman of Shach. Why? Either way. If he died in water that has an end, I guess, that you could see. So then one says he died, one says he was killed. That if it was in waters that do not end, then it's not a contradiction. Why? Because you could say that he came out of the water and then he was killed. And that's the choice. I have to look in better. What is this? What is he talking about? The waters that end and waters that don't end. That almost sounds more Kabbalah than halacha, but he's actually talking about a halachic thing here. But we are, it looks like we are out of time, and we'll continue. If actually Sif Yud is short. Let's do Sif Yud. They heard a voice that says that this person died, and they went there and did not find anybody. They heard somebody yells out, Yankel Pipik is dead. They saw he's dead. And they go and they don't find the person there. So she can get married. However, if this was heard in a field, in a pit, I guess like a cave, or in a ruins, then Ein Masin al Pi Sekel, then she cannot get married based on this voice. Why? Because we say maybe it is a demon. That it's coming out of where the shindalids are found. And being that the voice comes from a place where they are regularly found, we can say that maybe it wasn't a human voice, it was a demon voice. The comments of Aleph, if you test Hevi Shnei Deis Lahakil, Adea Rishon Siveres, the Loichai on Nishindalit Cloud. So there's another opinion that says we don't worry about we're not worried about it being a Shindalit. The Koshesh Chash Igun, Kameshin Cheshin Litzora Perush Shema Atzor Shel Ishazu Bal Calculus Escaverto, Veshmias Kilvalcha. Right, just like so. Why do we have to say why is Shindalit? Maybe it's a competing wife, right? That the competing wife wants to get rid of this wife, and since she wants to get rid of this wife, so she goes and she yells out, "Oh, such and such died," meaning the husband died. Why? Because she wants that this one should go, "Oh, he died." She'll go get remarried. Now she has the husband to herself, right? So we don't worry about this. So why would we worry about the shindalit here? Kachs, just so in cheshin the shindalit, just so we don't suspect that it was a demon that said this. And the second opinion is the Gabi Shindalit will make them the milsa v'tzarich sheyiru lei bevua de babua. V'chichazu lei mahani v'lo yamrin the ein on between as well as again. So the second one says no, it's different. That by, in other words, so the one svara says we're not worried about any of this, because just like we wouldn't worry about it being the competing woman. However, the other svara says no, it's different, because if it's in this case, if it's in a place where they are regularly found, it's different than a competing wife, and we worry about this. Doesn't make a difference if they saw the I guess this is also the babur that the Chelton Chik is talking about, is the what do you call it, the shade, what's called the reflection of when the sun, the shadow. We didn't see the shadow of the shadow. Like the going right to rise the idnali became that nowadays we are not well versed. We're not experts in seeing being able to see the shadow of the shadow. And at first glance, this is hard to understand. That somebody who was thrown into a pit. And he says that whoever will hear my voice, write a get to my wife. That we in that case we write the get even though we don't recognize him. I guess we're not seeing him. And some say that this is specifically when they saw the form of a person and the shadow of his shadow. The kan posak the loy mahani tzil. And here he says that doesn't help the so why there he writes it that you could if that it helps by the case of the guy in the pit who says to write his wife again. Why does it help? And here he's saying that we're not beki and we're not experts in the shadow of his shadow. So maybe the difference is that there, in that case, the body is before us, and we can see that it's a human. And we're worried that maybe the Ashindalit came and yelled out and went. But this body is somebody else's. Therefore, if you see the shadow of a shadow, not worried about it. Here, there's no body in front of us. Here, all we have to go on is this voice. And therefore, according to everybody, we would not rely on seeing the shadow of the shadow. And this it sits well according to the Rambam. Okay, we'll finish here. We'll come back by Yud Aleph. Okay. Don't forget to change the 1 second. Let me stop.